The Galactic Diplomatic Corps prided itself on three things: impeccable posture, unflappable demeanor, and the ability to navigate interspecies relations without causing interplanetary incidents. For 7,000 years, the GDC had maintained peace across 17 galactic arms through careful negotiation, thoughtful mediation, and extremely detailed PowerPoint presentations. Until Earth happened. Another one, sir. Diplomatic Coordinator Nexel placed the report on High Commissioner Draz's desk with the careful precision of someone handling radioactive material. Ambassador Tren has submitted her resignation from the Corps. She's requesting permanent residence on Earth. Says she's opening something called a food truck. Apparently it serves something called fusion tacos. High Commissioner Draz's upper eye ridges contorted in what passed for a grimace among the Velturian species. That's the 8th one this cycle. What is happening down there? The Situation Room of the GDC headquarters on Veltur Prime displayed a holographic map of the galaxy, with Earth highlighted in pulsing red. Not the red of danger. The GDC didn't consider humans dangerous, exactly. More like the red of a persistent rash that defied treatment. The pattern is always the same, continued Nexel, bringing up a sequence of before and after images. Our diplomats arrive on Earth following protocol, professional, dignified. Then after a few Earth months he flicked to the after images. They return like this. The images showed various diplomats from across the galaxy in bewildering states. A Nexovian ambassador wearing what appeared to be a Hawaiian shirt and something called cargo shorts, a Flexian envoy with a tattoo reading "Live, Laugh, Laugh, Love" in standard galactic across all three of its thoraxes, and most disturbing of all, a Crixian diplomat whose species was known for their rigid adherence to ceremony, doing something called a keg stand at what the report described as a frat party. It's beyond comprehension, muttered Draz. We've dealt with pleasure planets, warrior cultures, even that civilization of sentient mathematics. Nothing affects our diplomats like Earth does. They go there, and they come back relaxed. He spat the word relaxed like it was profanity. Worse than relaxed, sir. They come back with opinions, personal preferences. The last ambassador insisted on having meetings outside normal hours because she'd become not a morning person. Nexel shuddered dramatically. They start using contractions. Enough. Draz stood, his ceremonial robes billowing impressively. This calls for our most experienced diplomat. Someone with an impenetrable psychological profile. Someone who won't be seduced by Earth's chaotic culture. You don't mean? I do. Summon Tren Vorax. Tren Vorax was a legend in the Corps. 300 years of diplomatic service without a single protocol violation. He'd negotiated peace between the quantum hive and the dimensional fold, two species that literally couldn't perceive each other's existence. He'd spent 40 years undercover on Creotia without once removing his environmental suit, despite temperatures that would freeze methane. His psychological evaluations showed a mind so devoted to procedure that he filed reports on his own dreams to make sure they complied with GDC regulations. If anyone could resist Earth's corrupting influence, it was Tren Vorax. Ambassador Vorax, said Draz when Tren arrived, precisely on time, we have a situation that requires your unique talents. I serve the Corps, High Commissioner. Tren's voice was modulated to the exact tone prescribed by the Diplomatic Handbook for Serious Situations, Section 4, Subsection B, Paragraph 17. It's Earth. If Tren was concerned, his perfectly neutral expression didn't show it. I've reviewed the files on the previous diplomatic missions. A most unusual case. Can you handle it? Mance. High Commissioner, with all due respect, I once spent 3 years negotiating with a species that communicates exclusively through interpretive dance. I believe I can handle a planet of bipedal mammals with a fondness for processed sugar and reality television. Draz nodded solemnly. Very well. You depart at 0800 tomorrow. Remember your training. Remember who you are. Always, sir. Tren bowed precisely 30 degrees, the angle of respect without subservience. I will not fail the Corps. 3 days later, as Tren's diplomatic vessel approached the Sol system, he reviewed his mission parameters one final time. Objective: determine the source of Earth's corrupting influence on galactic diplomats. Secondary objective, establish proper diplomatic relations without becoming affected. He adjusted his formal collar and checked his appearance in the reflective surface of the view screen. Perfect posture. Neutral expression. Not a hint of personality. Earth wouldn't know what hit it. As Tren's ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, he consulted the extensive briefing materials on human diplomatic customs. The GDC had compiled a 12,000-page document titled Understanding Humans, a comprehensive guide to Earth's baffling social norms. Tren had memorized it cover to cover, twice. The ship landed with perfect precision on the designated diplomatic landing pad in Geneva, Switzerland, Earth's neutral territory for extraterrestrial relations. Tren took a deep breath and activated the airlock. The door opened with a satisfying hiss. And then Earth hit him all at once. The first thing was the smell, complex, organic, chaotic. The second was the noise, hundreds of humans chattering, birds calling, vehicles rumbling. The third was the gravity, just slightly higher than standard galactic norm, making him feel heavier, more present. Ambassador Vorax, welcome to Earth. A human female approached with what the manual identified as a broad smile, supposedly a sign of friendliness, though Tren couldn't help noticing how it exposed an alarming number of teeth. Greetings, Tren replied, executing the precise bow appropriate for first contact with a mid-tier diplomatic representative. I am Ambassador Tren Vorax of the Galactic Diplomatic Corps, classification Omega-7, diplomatic registry The 9942 Epsilon. The human's smile faltered slightly. Yes, I know who you are. I'm Melanie Rodriguez, your Earth liaison. She extended her hand. Tren stared at it. Page 347 of the manual, humans use handshakes as a greeting ritual. Grasp firmly but not excessively. Maintain for 2 to 3 seconds. Do not attempt to smell their hand afterward, as this is considered inappropriate in most Earth cultures. He grasped her hand and shook it precisely twice. 2.5 seconds, he noted with satisfaction. What? Melanie tilted her head. The handshake duration. Optimal according to Earth custom. Right, Melanie gestured toward a waiting vehicle. Your accommodations are prepared at the diplomatic residence. We can go over your schedule on the way. The vehicle, a limousine according to Earth taxonomy, was spacious and climate-controlled. Tren sat with perfect posture as Melanie consulted a small electronic device. Tomorrow morning you have meetings with the Secretary General, followed by a press conference, lunch with the Security Council representatives, and then... Excuse me, Tren interrupted, but the schedule transmitted to the Corps indicated that lunch would be with the Economic Development Committee, not the Security Council. Melanie blinked. Yes, there was a last-minute change. The Security Council representatives were very keen to meet you, and the Economic Committee was happy to reschedule for Thursday. Tren felt his left eye twitch involuntarily. Changes without proper notification procedures. Things move pretty fast here sometimes, Melanie said with another smile. We have to be flexible. Flexible. The word echoed in Tren's mind like a warning klaxon. Flexibility was the first symptom reported in the corrupted diplomats. He straightened his already perfect posture. I see. While I understand Earth customs may differ, the Corps operates on precise scheduling. In the future, please ensure all changes are communicated through proper channels with appropriate lead time. Melanie's smile didn't falter, but something subtle changed in her eyes. Was it amusement? Of course, Ambassador. We'll do our best. As they approached the diplomatic residence, a stately building surrounded by carefully maintained gardens, Tren noticed something peculiar. Ms. Rodriguez, why are there so many humans gathered outside the residence? Oh, those are fans. Fans? For cooling purposes? Melanie laughed, a strange musical sound that made Tren's left antenna twitch. No, Ambassador. They're people who are excited to see you. Aliens are pretty popular on Earth. Some of them have been camping out since yesterday, hoping to get a glimpse of you. Tren consulted his mental database and found nothing about fans in this context. This was not in the briefing materials. Yet, while humans can be unpredictable. As they pulled up to the entrance, the crowd erupted in cheers. Some held signs with messages like "Welcome to Earth" and "We come in peace," and most puzzlingly, "Tren for President." "I am not eligible for Earth political positions," Tren noted with concern. "It's just a joke," Ambassador Melanie explained as security personnel created a path through the crowd. "Humans like to joke." "Joking is a form of deliberate communicative inaccuracy," Tren recited from the manual. "Often employed to create social bonding through shared amusement." "Exactly. You'll get the hang of it." Tren very much doubted that. Inside the residence, a team of staff waited to attend to his needs. One approached with a tray. "Welcome drink, Ambassador? We have water, juice, or champagne." Tren blinked rapidly. The Corps protocol does not include welcome beverages in the arrival procedure. The staff member looked uncertainly at Melanie, who stepped in smoothly. "Water would be fine, thank you." "I did not request water," Tren pointed out. "Trust me, you'll need to stay hydrated here," Melanie said. "Earth's atmosphere might be a bit different than what you're used to." Tren accepted the water with minimal protest, calculating that proper hydration was indeed logical. As he sipped it, noting the strange mineral composition, he surveyed his accommodations. "Ms. Rodriguez, there appears to be an error. These quarters contain recreational items." He gestured to what appeared to be an entertainment system, books, and something called a mini-bar. "Those are for your personal time, Ambassador." "Personal time?" "Yes, you know, when you're not working. For relaxation." Tren's expression remained perfectly neutral, but internally, alarm bells were ringing. Personal time? Relaxation? These were the very concepts that had corrupted his predecessors. "I do not require these items. My schedule is devoted entirely to diplomatic functions. When not engaged in official duties, I will be preparing reports or meditating on optimal negotiation strategies." Melanie's expression was unreadable to Tren's eyes. "Of course, Ambassador. But they're here if you change your mind." "I will not change my mind. The Corps has selected me specifically for my unwavering dedication to protocol." "Right." Melanie checked her device. "Well, I'll leave you to settle in. Your first meeting is tomorrow at 9 a.m. A car will pick you up at 8:30. Is there anything else you need?" "No, Ms. Rodriguez. You may depart." After Melanie left, Tren spent 6 hours arranging his quarters to precise Corps specifications. He moved the recreational items to a closet, repositioned the furniture to optimal diplomatic angles, and set up his personal air purifier to remove any potentially corrupting Earth pheromones. As night fell, he sat on the edge of his bed, perfectly straight, and dictated his first report. Day 1 on Earth. Atmospheric conditions tolerable. Local liaison lacks proper procedural discipline. Locals display inappropriate enthusiasm. Situation concerning but manageable. Tren Vorax, signing off. He lay down to sleep precisely on his back, arms at his sides, ready to face whatever challenges Earth might throw at him tomorrow. Tren's first official week on Earth proceeded with surprising smoothness by Earth standards at least. Which meant, by Tren's standards, it was absolute chaos. Meetings started 3 minutes late. Humans interrupted each other constantly. A dignitary from Japan had actually laughed during a formal trade discussion. The UN Secretary-General had referred to Tren as buddy at one point. Tren had spent each evening filing increasingly concerned reports to the Corps. But on day 8, the real trouble began. "You've been working non-stop," Melanie said as she walked into Tren's office without the customary 3 knocks. "Tonight we're showing you what Earth is really about." Tren looked up from his perfectly organized desk. "I am already aware of what Earth is really about. I have cataloged 219 violations of standard diplomatic protocol since my arrival." "Exactly my point." Melanie grinned. "You've seen the official side. But to understand why your colleagues never want to leave, you need to experience Earth culture. The Secretary General agrees. It's officially a cultural exchange dinner. Tren's antenna twitched involuntarily. The Secretary General has authorized this? It's on your updated schedule. Melanie held up her device triumphantly. Tren checked his own device. Indeed, cultural exchange dinner, mandatory attendance had been added to his calendar. He sighed internally. At least it was properly documented this time. Very well. I will attend this cultural exchange dinner. I assume formal diplomatic attire is required? Melanie's eyes sparkled with what Tren was beginning to recognize as mischief. Actually, we're going casual tonight. Do you have anything less rigid? 3 hours later, Tren found himself sitting in something called a pizzeria wearing what Melanie had termed business casual, a concept that seemed inherently contradictory to Tren. His formal diplomatic robes had been replaced with khakis and a button-down shirt. He felt practically naked. This is a traditional Earth diplomatic venue? Tren asked dubiously, looking around at the noisy, crowded restaurant where humans of all ages were engaged in animated conversation and consuming flat, circular food items. This is where real diplomacy happens on Earth, said Miguel, one of the junior diplomats who had joined them. Over food, drinks, and conversation. Tren was skeptical, but he had come prepared. He'd studied Earth cuisine extensively and was ready to analyze this pizza phenomenon. Then the food arrived, and Tren's carefully constructed world began to crumble. The smell hit him first, a complex bouquet of tomato, herbs, melted cheese, and various toppings. It was intriguing. The humans around the table immediately grabbed slices with their hands, a clear violation of hygiene protocols, but with such enthusiasm that Tren felt compelled to observe closely. You have to try it, Melanie urged, placing a slice on his plate. I will analyze this food item, Tren agreed reluctantly, pulling out a small scanner from his pocket. Miguel laughed. You don't scan pizza, Ambassador. You eat it after proper analysis. Pizza waits for no one, said another diplomat, Lisa, who was already on her second slice. It's best when it's hot. Tren hesitated, then picked up the slice with his three-fingered hand, mimicking the human's technique. He took a small, cautious bite. Flavor exploded across his taste receptors. Complex, chaotic, utterly unregulated flavor that violated at least 17 core guidelines on diplomatic nutrition. It was. This is acceptable, Tren said, taking another bite before he could stop himself. Melanie grinned. Just acceptable? Perhaps interesting, Tren conceded, reaching for his water to hide his confusion. Except it wasn't water that Miguel placed before him, but something amber-colored in a glass container. What is this? Beer, Miguel said innocently. Traditional Earth beverage. Pairs perfectly with pizza. Tren knew he should refuse. The Corps had strict regulations about consciousness-altering substances during diplomatic missions. But he also knew that refusing could constitute a cultural offense. And his mission was to understand why diplomats became corrupted. For research purposes, he took a sip. The complex flavors of hops, malt, and carbonation danced across his palate. It was fascinating. Completely unregulated, yet following its own internal logic of flavor. By the time they finished dinner, Tren had consumed 3 slices of pizza and 1.5 beers. He felt different, more aware of the sounds around him, the laughter, the music playing in the background. Now, said Melanie, as they left the restaurant, for part 2 of Earth Culture Night. There's more? Tren was surprised to hear his own voice sounding less precisely modulated than usual. Oh, Ambassador, Lisa laughed. We're just getting started. Part 2 turned out to be something called a movie, a visual storytelling medium that Tren had read about but never experienced. The film was called Die Hard, which Melanie assured him was a classic of Earth cinema. Tren sat in the darkened room of Melanie's apartment as the images flickered across the large screen. The narrative violated every principle of logical storytelling. The protagonist, a human named John McClane, broke rules constantly, defied authority, made inappropriate jokes in life-threatening situations, and generally behaved in ways that would result in immediate dismissal from the Corps. And yet Tren couldn't look away. When McClane delivered his signature catchphrase, the humans all cheered. Tren found himself wondering what it would feel like to say something so undiplomatic. After the movie, conversation flowed freely, aided by something called cocktails. Tren found himself asking questions, not the precisely formulated information-gathering queries of his training, but genuinely curious questions about Earth culture, about the humans' personal lives, about things that had absolutely nothing to do with his diplomatic mission. When he finally returned to his residence at an hour far beyond the Corps-mated sleep cycle initiation time, Tren realized with horror that he had not filed his daily report. Worse, he wasn't sure he could accurately recall all the protocol violations he'd witnessed or committed. For the first time in his 300-year career, Ambassador Tren Vorax filed an incomplete report. Earth cultural immersion proceeded as planned, he wrote vaguely. Further analysis required. The next morning, Tren awoke feeling strangely different. His thoughts seemed less ordered, with random memories of the previous night intruding on his usual methodical morning routine. He found himself humming a tune from the movie soundtrack, behavior so unprofessional that he actually gasped aloud when he realized what he was doing. But the true test came at that day's high-level diplomatic meeting with Earth's International Trade Council. As the human representative droned on about tariff regulations, Tren found his mind wandering another first. He imagined the representative as Hans Gruber, the villain from Die Hard, and had to suppress a most undignified snort. Ambassador Vorax, the council chair, said suddenly, "Do you have thoughts on this proposal?" All eyes turned to him. Normally, Tren would have delivered a perfectly measured response quoting precisely from Corps policy. Instead, he heard himself say, "It seems to me that we're overthinking this. Why don't we just keep it simple?" The room fell silent. Then the chair smiled broadly, refreshingly direct. "I agree completely." As the meeting continued with a new, more relaxed atmosphere, Tren felt a strange sensation spreading through his chest. It took him several minutes to identify it, simply because he had never experienced it before in a professional context. It was satisfaction, not the satisfaction of following protocol perfectly, but the satisfaction of actually making progress. That night he stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. "What is happening to me?" he whispered to himself. His reflection didn't answer, but somewhere in the back of his mind he could hear Bruce Willis saying, "Welcome to the party, pal." By the third week of his Earth assignment, Tren Vorax was experiencing what his training would have classified as a full-scale diplomatic identity crisis. The symptoms were alarming. He had begun to prefer comfortable clothes over his formal diplomatic attire. He'd started using contractions in non-emergency situations. Most disturbingly, he had developed opinions about food, music, and entertainment that were not based on Corps-approved evaluation metrics. The final breaking point came during the Interplanetary Trade Summit, where representatives from 17 galactic civilizations gathered with Earth's diplomatic corps to discuss resource exchange protocols. Under normal circumstances, this would have been Tren's moment to shine. Formal, high-stakes diplomacy was his specialty. The Drosian ambassador was in the middle of a lengthy speech denouncing Earth's chaotic approach to resource management when Tren noticed something. The humans weren't arguing back. They were just sitting there, letting the criticism wash over them with those small, enigmatic smiles that Tren had come to recognize as their "we're just humoring you" expression. Something stirred in Tren. A strange, unfamiliar sensation that started in his midsection and rose to his throat. Before he could analyze it properly, he found himself on his feet. "Point of order," he said, interrupting the Drosian ambassador mid-sentence, a breach of protocol so severe that several other galactic representatives actually gasped. "Ambassador Vorax?" The chairperson looked surprised. "You wish to speak?" "I do." Tren straightened his Earth-style necktie, another deviation from his customary attire. "I believe the Drosian ambassador's characterization of Earth's resource management is fundamentally flawed." The room fell silent. The Drosian ambassador's upper appendages twitched in offense. The Corps' position on this matter is well documented, the Drosian said stiffly. Earth's methods lack the necessary structure and— With all due respect, Tren interrupted again, the Corps' position was developed without adequate contextual understanding. More gasps. Melanie, sitting in the human section, was staring at him with wide eyes. What I mean to say, Tren continued, shocking himself with each word, is that Earth's approach isn't chaotic, it's adaptive. Have any of you actually tried living by Earth rules for a while? They seem messy at first, but there's a deeper logic to them. Ambassador Vorax, the Flexian representative, said carefully, "Are you feeling well? Perhaps you should step outside for a moment." "I'm feeling fine," Tren said, and realized it was true. He felt better than he had in decades. "In fact, I'm thinking clearly for the first time since I arrived. Earth doesn't need to adopt our systems. Maybe we could learn something from theirs." He turned to face the human delegates, who were watching with expressions ranging from shock to delight. Take their entertainment, for instance. "Have you seen Die Hard?" Tren asked the room at large, earning confused looks from his galactic colleagues and suppressed laughter from the humans. "It's completely illogical, breaks every rule of proper conflict resolution, and yet it works, just like humans. They break all the rules and somehow still succeed." "Ambassador," the chairperson said, alarm evident in their voice, "perhaps we should take a short recess." "No need," Tren said, feeling a strange exhilaration. "I'm simply providing context for our discussions. For example, did you know that humans have over 800 varieties of what they call cheese? 800. The Corps only recognizes 12 categories of protein-based nutritional compounds. But humans just keep inventing new ones, because, and this is the important part, they enjoy it." The Drosian ambassador was frantically signaling to an aide. "Contact the Corps immediately," Tren heard him hiss. "Tell them Vorax has been compromised." Tren knew he should care about this. His rational mind understood that he was behaving inappropriately, that his career was imploding in real time. But another part of him, a new part, an Earth-influence part, just couldn't bring himself to worry about it. "You know what?" he said, loosening his tie with one smooth motion that he'd practiced after seeing it in a film called Ocean's 11. "Another Melanie recommendation. I think this meeting could use some pizza." The chairperson's mouth actually fell open. "Ambassador Vorax, this is a formal diplomatic proceeding." "Exactly," Tren said, grinning in a very UN Vorax-like manner. "And my extensive research on Earth has shown that their best diplomacy happens over food that people actually enjoy eating. So I took the liberty of ordering 20 large pizzas with various toppings to accommodate different species' dietary requirements. They should be arriving right about." On cue, the doors to the chamber opened, and a parade of delivery personnel entered bearing stacked boxes emitting tantalizing aromas. "Now," Tren finished triumphantly. What followed was unprecedented in the history of galactic diplomacy. As the chamber filled with the smell of pizza, even the most rigid diplomatic representatives found themselves curious. The Crixian ambassador, whose species was known for their 11-hour ritual meals, was the first to cautiously accept a slice. "This is irregular," the Crixian said after taking a bite. Then, with evident surprise but not unpleasant. Gradually, the formal structure of the meeting dissolved. Delegates clustered in small groups, pizza in hand, engaging in exactly the kind of informal, productive conversation that Tren had learned was Earth's diplomatic superpower. From across the room, Melanie caught his eye and gave him a thumbs up. Tren returned the gesture another first. As the impromptu pizza summit continued, a Corps messenger discreetly approached Tren. "Urgent communication from High Commissioner Dreas," they said, offering a secure tablet. Tren accepted it, knowing what was coming. The message was brief and devastating. "Ambassador Vorax, evidence suggests contamination by Earth influence. Immediate recall ordered. Replacement en route. Surrender diplomatic credentials upon receipt of this message." 3 months ago, this message would have destroyed Tren. His identity, his purpose, his entire existence was the Corps. But now, reading it, he felt something unexpected, relief. He handed the tablet back to the messenger. "Tell the High Commissioner I'll submit my formal response shortly." The messenger nodded and retreated. Tren looked around the room at the unlikely scene he had created: galactic diplomats laughing, talking, eating pizza with their hands, breaking 100 protocols but actually communicating with each other and with the humans for the first time. He made his decision. Later that evening, in his quarters, Tren composed his response to the Corps. It was the shortest official communication of his career. "I resign. Send pizza, not replacement. Earth's got this. Tren." As he hit send, he felt a strange bubbling sensation in his chest. It took him a moment to identify it, having never experienced it before. He was laughing. Now, the Galactic Diplomatic Corps did not accept resignations via two-sentence messages, especially not from their most decorated diplomat. 3 days after Tren's Pizza Summit, which, incidentally, had led to a breakthrough agreement on interstellar trade routes that had been stalled for decades, a sleek GDC vessel entered Earth's atmosphere without the usual diplomatic notifications. Tren was in the middle of what the humans called a karaoke night, with Melanie and several Earth diplomats when his communicator buzzed with an urgent alert. The message was terse: extraction team arriving. Cooperation expected. "Problem?" asked Melanie, noting his expression as he set down the microphone in the middle of his rendition of Don't Stop Believin', a song he had become inexplicably fond of. "My former employers are here," Tren said, straightening his casual Earth-attire jeans and a t-shirt emblazoned with the phrase "I visited Earth and all I got was this lousy personality." "They're not big on accepting resignations." Melanie's eyes widened. "They're taking you back?" "They're going to try." Tren surprised himself with his own calm. "Don't worry. I've been studying Earth's conflict resolution methods." "You mean you're going to yell yippee-ki-yay and throw them off a building?" Tren grinned, another habit he'd picked up. "That's Plan B." The extraction team was waiting in Tren's quarters when he arrived, 3 senior Corps diplomats in formal attire. Their postures so rigid they made Tren's former self look relaxed by comparison. Ambassador Vorax, the lead diplomat, Nen, greeted him with the precise bow for a disciplinary meeting. "You appear to have abandoned Corps-mandated attire." Tren glanced down at his jeans and t-shirt. "I found Earth clothing allows for greater range of motion, useful for activities like dancing and high-fiving." The 3 diplomats exchanged alarmed glances at the unfamiliar terminology. "Ambassador, we've been sent to escort you back to Corps headquarters for reorientation," said the second diplomat, Plex. "Your condition is not your fault. Earth contamination has affected many capable diplomats before you." "My condition?" Tren raised an eyebrow, a human gesture he'd practiced extensively. "Your behavioral deviation," clarified the third diplomat, Vreen. "The inappropriate informality. The pizza incident. The use of colloquialisms." "The resignation message," added Nen with particular distaste. 2 sentences. No formal closing. Inadequate letterhead. Tren shrugged, another Earth gesture that had initially felt alien but now seemed perfectly natural. "I've learned that sometimes less is more." All 3 diplomats flinched as if he'd slapped them. "You see?" Plex whispered to the others. "Advanced contamination. We must initiate emergency extraction protocols." Tren sighed. "Look, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not going back. I've discovered something here on Earth that the Corps wouldn't understand." "What could primitives possibly have that would outweigh 3 centuries of dedicated service?" Nen demanded. Tren thought about pizza and movies and karaoke, about laughing without calculating the appropriate duration first, about Melanie's smile when he finally got a joke without having it explained, about how diplomatic meetings actually accomplished something when people spoke honestly instead of reciting protocols. "Fun," he said simply. The diplomats recoiled as if he'd uttered an obscenity. "Ambassador Vorax, you leave us no choice," Vreen said formally. By the authority of the High Commissioner, we are implementing Protocol 47B, involuntary extraction of compromised personnel. They moved toward him in perfect formation, prepared to use the gentle but effective restraint techniques taught to all Corps diplomats for rare situations like diplomat illness or security emergencies. What they weren't prepared for was Tren's new knowledge of Earth defensive techniques, specifically the fake-out move he'd learned from watching basketball with Miguel. As they reached for him, Tren sidestepped with unexpected agility, causing the three diplomats to collide with each other in a most undignified tangle. "What in the 17 galactic arms was that?" sputtered Nen as they disentangled themselves. "Man, you guys really need to loosen up," Tren said, leaning casually against the doorframe. "Come on, I'll show you what Earth is really about. We'll start with pizza." "We will not be corrupted," declared Plex, but there was a note of uncertainty in his voice as he straightened his now rumpled formal robes. "Not corrupted, enlightened," Tren corrected. "What do you have to lose? One Earth day. I'll show you around, you can make your report. And if you still think I need reorientation, I'll go quietly." The three diplomats huddled together, whispering furiously in formal consultation stance. "Agreed," Nen finally said. "One Earth day. For proper documentation of your condition." Tren grinned. "Perfect. First stop, breakfast burritos." What followed was a day that would later become legendary in Corps history, though the official records would be heavily redacted. Tren took his former colleagues on a whirlwind tour of Earth's cultural highlights: breakfast burritos with hot sauce that made Vreen's antennae curl, a spontaneous dance party in a public park where Plex discovered an unexpected talent for the robot, an afternoon at a beach where Nen reluctantly admitted that doing nothing productive for 2 hours was not entirely unpleasant. By evening, when Tren introduced them to the concept of ice cream and sunset watching, the extraction team's perfect postures had softened noticeably. "I still don't understand," Nen said, licking a chocolate ice cream cone with methodical precision, "how experiencing temporary sensory pleasure justifies abandoning your duties." "It's not just pleasure," Tren explained. "It's about living in the moment instead of always following the script. Earth taught me that sometimes the best diplomatic outcomes come from genuine connection, not perfect protocol." "But the Corps has maintained peace for 7,000 years through strict adherence to protocol," Plex argued, though he was now sitting cross-legged on the grass, a posture that would have earned a reprimand at headquarters. "And how many of those peaceful agreements actually solve problems?" Tren challenged. "How many are just carefully worded documents that postpone real solutions? On Earth, I've seen enemies become friends over shared meals. I've watched centuries-old conflicts begin to heal because someone told a joke at the right moment." Vreen, who had removed his formal outer robe and was now wearing just the inner tunic, frowned thoughtfully. The pizza summit was unorthodox, but the trade agreement it produced was remarkably comprehensive. "Exactly," Tren exclaimed. "That's Earth's secret. They break all the rules but somehow get results. They've shown me that there's more than one way to be a good diplomat." As night fell, Tren made his final move, karaoke night at Melanie's favorite bar. The extraction team protested vigorously until they actually entered the establishment and witnessed the joyful chaos of humans taking turns singing with varying degrees of skill but universal enthusiasm. "This is madness," Nen declared as a group of humans belted out something called Bohemian Rhapsody with dramatic gestures. "This is human culture at its finest," Tren countered. "Watch how they support each other, even when someone sings terribly. There's a lesson in that." When Melanie arrived with several of her diplomat friends, the evening took an unexpected turn. Rather than maintaining professional distance as Corps protocol demanded, the extraction team found themselves drawn into conversations with the humans, who showed genuine interest in their culture. "So you've never had a vacation?" Miguel asked Plex, looking genuinely horrified. "Not once in 300 years?" "The Corps provides scheduled contemplation periods for optimal function," Plex explained. "That's not the same thing at all," Miguel protested. "You need to experience a real vacation. Beaches, drinks with little umbrellas, absolutely no work communications." By midnight, the unthinkable had happened. Vreen had performed EMCA with a group of encouraging humans. Nen had engaged in a lengthy, unauthorized discussion about Earth sports with several off-duty unsecurity personnel. Plex had consumed something called a margarita, and was now explaining Corps diplomatic protocol to an increasingly amused group of humans with more animation than any Corps member had ever displayed. "You see," Tren said quietly to Melanie as they watched the scene. "Earth's corruption is spreading." Melanie laughed. "Is that what you call it?" "I'd call it having a good time, or maybe actually connecting with people." "In Corps terminology, those are symptoms of contamination," Tren said with a smile. "Severe cases may lead to spontaneous displays of personality and unauthorized enjoyment." "Sounds serious," Melanie teased. "Is there a cure?" Tren watched as Nin cautiously accepted a plate of nachos from his new human friends. "They used to think extraction and reorientation would work, but I'm beginning to think the condition might be permanent." The next morning, when the extraction team was due to depart with or without Tren, he arrived at their ship to find them in a state of uncharacteristic disarray. Their formal robes were slightly rumpled. Vreen was wearing sunglasses, a human accessory for dealing with their star's brightness, or, in this case, the after-effects of margaritas. "We've reached a decision," Nen announced, standing not quite as straight as Corps posture guidelines required. "After thorough investigation, we find that your condition, while concerning, may have diplomatic applications." "Applications?" Tren repeated, trying not to smile. "The course has always adapted to new challenges," Plex added, somewhat defensively. "Earth represents a unique diplomatic environment requiring specialized approaches." "In other words," Vreen clarified, adjusting his sunglasses, "we're recommending that you remain on Earth as a special case study, for research purposes." Tren nodded solemnly, though his eyes betrayed his amusement. "A wise decision. And will you be taking back samples of Earth culture for further study? Pizza? Music? Perhaps some ice cream?" The three diplomats exchanged glances. "That would be irresponsible," Nin said stiffly. Then, lowering his voice, "But yes, we've allocated cargo space for cultural artifacts, for the official record." As they prepared to board their ship, Plex paused. "Ambassador Vorax Tren, are you certain you wish to remain here? Earth is chaotic." "I'm certain," Tren replied. "I found something here I never knew I was missing." "Then we wish you success in your research," Vreen said, offering a farewell gesture that was just slightly less formal than protocol required. As the ship departed, Melanie joined Tren, watching it disappear into the morning sky. "Think they'll be okay?" she asked. Tren nodded. "They're already changed. Not as much as I am, but enough that they'll see Earth differently now. The real question is what they'll report back to the Corps." "And what do you think that will be?" Tren grinned, a full, uninhibited human-style grin that would have been a serious violation of Corps emotional display guidelines. "I think they'll recommend extreme caution when dealing with Earth. And then they'll find excuses to come back for more research." 1 year after Ambassador Tren Vorax's contamination and the failed extraction attempt, the Galactic Diplomatic Corps had established new protocols for Earth relations protocols, unlike those for any other planet in the known galaxy. Directive 47F, commonly known as the Earth Exception, stated that all diplomatic missions to Earth must be limited to 3 Earth months, mandatory decontamination periods afterward. Diplomats were explicitly forbidden from consuming Earth entertainment, participating in karaoke, or eating pizza. These rules were so strict that many diplomats wondered what terrible dangers Earth must pose, which made Earth assignments incredibly popular. Another application for the Earth rotation. High Commissioner Draz sighed, adding it to the towering stack on his desk. "This one's from Ambassador Krex. Isn't he the one who claimed Earth media was psychologically damaging at the last council meeting?" Diplomatic Coordinator Nexel, who had developed an unfortunate habit of smirking a human expression he'd picked up during his own brief Earth visit, nodded. "The same. His official request cites the need to understand the enemy." And I suppose it's just coincidence that he's requested his rotation to coincide with something called Oktoberfest. Complete coincidence, I'm sure, sir. Draz rubbed his upper eye ridges wearily. The Earth situation had spiraled completely out of control. Despite all precautions, diplomats returning from Earth showed subtle but unmistakable signs of contamination. They were more relaxed. They occasionally used contractions. Some had even been heard humming Earth melodies during official functions. Most troubling of all, diplomatic outcomes throughout the galaxy had actually improved. Agreements were being reached faster. Conflicts were being resolved with unexpected creativity. The Corps' efficiency had increased by 23% since Earth contamination began spreading, a fact that Draz found deeply disturbing, as it challenged everything he believed about proper diplomatic procedure. "What's the latest report from Vorax?" Draz asked reluctantly. Excel produced a datapad. As usual, it fails to follow any standard reporting format. It's a series of images with minimal text. He calls it a PowerPoint with memes. Memes? Draz repeated the unfamiliar word with distaste. A form of Earth communication involving images with humorous captions. Apparently very effective at conveying complex ideas quickly. Barbaric, Draz muttered, but took the pad and scrolled through it. Despite himself, he found the report strangely compelling. One image showing a small Earth feline hanging from a branch with the text "Hang in there, Galactic Peace Edition." Somehow captured the essence of the Corps mission better than any formal mission statement ever had. He's also attached the quarterly trade figures, Nexel added. Earth's diplomatic effectiveness has increased 47% since they started incorporating what they call the Vorax method. Which is less protocol, more connection. Their diplomats now bring food to negotiations, use humor to diffuse tensions, and focus on building relationships rather than just following procedures. Draz stared out the window at the gleaming spires of Velter Prime, the perfect orderly civilization that had been the model for the Corps since its founding. It shouldn't work. It flies in the face of everything we know about diplomatic science. And yet, sir. And yet it does work, Draz finished with a sigh. Which leaves us with an unpleasant choice. Sir? Either we continue fighting this Earth contamination, watching as our best diplomats find increasingly creative ways to be assigned there and return changed, or we adapt. Nexel's antennae perked up in surprise. Adapt, sir? You mean? I mean, Draz said heavily, that perhaps it's time to send an official delegation to Earth, not to extract Vorax, but to learn. The words seemed to physically pain him as he spoke them. Learn from humans, sir? If we can't beat them, Draz couldn't believe he was saying this, but the numbers didn't lie. Whatever Earth was doing, however chaotic and undignified it might be, was getting results. 3 weeks later, an unprecedented meeting took place in what humans called Central Park, an open green space in New York City. Instead of a formal diplomatic chamber with proper environmental controls and protocol officers, the Galactic Diplomatic Corps leadership found themselves sitting on blankets spread across grass, surrounded by humans engaged in various recreational activities. "This is your idea of a diplomatic venue?" Draz asked Tren, who was now officially Earth's diplomatic liaison to the galaxy, a position created specifically for him. "Trust me, Commissioner," Tren said, handing Draz something called a hot dog wrapped in paper. "Earth has taught me that the setting shapes the outcome. Formal rooms create formal agreements. Places like this." He gestured to the open park where humans were playing, talking, eating, simply existing together in the sunshine. Create possibilities. Draz reluctantly accepted the hot dog, noting with alarm that he was expected to eat it with his hands, yet another protocol violation. "And what possibilities do you envision for the Corps, Ambassador Vorax?" Tren smiled, a full, genuine smile that would have been grounds for disciplinary action a year ago. "I envision a diplomatic corps that understands there's more than one way to make peace. That sometimes rules need to be broken to make progress. That connection matters more than protocol." Draz took a cautious bite of the hot dog and was surprised by the complex flavors. And you believe humans can teach us this? They already have, Tren said, nodding toward where Melanie was chatting animatedly with several junior corps diplomats, but all of whom were actually laughing during an official function. Look around you. Your diplomats are happier. They're more effective. They're connecting with each other and with other species in ways our rulebooks never taught us. A small human child ran past, chasing a flying toy, completely unconcerned about interrupting a gathering of some of the most powerful diplomatic figures in the galaxy. Instead of being offended, several diplomats watched the child with expressions of curiosity and even amusement. It's chaos, Draz said, but his tone lacked conviction. It's life, Tren corrected gently. Messy, unpredictable, beautiful life. Something the Corps had forgotten in its pursuit of perfect diplomatic form. Draz was silent for a long moment, watching the scene around him. Then, with great ceremony, he reached up and unfastened the top button of his formal diplomatic collar, a gesture so symbolic that several nearby diplomats actually gasped. Perhaps, Draz said carefully, there is room in our protocols for some adaptation. Tren grinned. Welcome to Earth, Commissioner. Trust me, it only gets better from here. 6 months later, the Galactic Diplomatic Corps issued Directive 49C, announcing a revolutionary new training program for all diplomats, the mandatory 3-month rotations on Earth to study alternative diplomatic methodologies. The directive was accompanied by a most unusual official document, an image of a cat hanging from a branch with the text "Diplomacy, you're doing it right." Across the galaxy, diplomatic officers reacted with official statements of concern about maintaining proper standards. Privately, they celebrated their upcoming Earth assignments by practicing something called the electric slide and researching the difference between thin crust and deep dish. And on Earth, in a small pizzeria in Geneva, Ambassador Tren Vorax raised a glass with Melanie Rodriguez to toast their unofficial diplomatic victory. You know, Melanie said, when all this started, we just wanted formal recognition and fair trade agreements. We never set out to change galactic diplomacy. That's the thing about Earth, Tren replied with the wisdom of someone who had been thoroughly corrupted by pizza, movies, and karaoke nights. You never just change diplomatic policies. You change diplomats. And that changes everything. Outside the pizzeria's windows, the lights of Earth shone against the night sky, a beacon that would continue to transform anyone who visited. One pizza slice and impromptu karaoke performance at a time. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was a wonderful thing. As for why the galaxy didn't send diplomats to Earth anymore, well, technically they did, they just never came back quite the same. And the Galactic Diplomatic Corps had finally learned to see that not as a problem, but as Earth's greatest gift to the stars.